Hello people, what is going on? Back again with another video. To my right is Sloth. You know who he is from the Babbling Irons channel, and we're here to talk about Mavropanos' great game last night, West Ham, Lopetegui, and a little bit more. Sloth, how are you doing? How's your
Yeah,
war wound?
I'm in a state of shock and I'm recovering, and E20 vids will get me through it. Don't you worry.
No worries, mate. All I'm going to say is Sloth just told me the story. There's some mad people out there. There really is. You was at the England game last night, obviously, and you see Mavropanos play. I did watch the game, so I can't really judge it. How did he play for you?
He was just aerially dominant, physically dominant. I think he completely bullied England's attack, and he looked pretty calm while doing so. I was really impressed with him, and I think it's an interesting contrast to kind of how we've seen him in a West Ham shirt. I know I was one of the big supporters of getting him in, but I think last night he showed exactly why a lot of West Ham fans want him in and what he has to offer, because he didn't even really look phased by the quality that England have. And I think it was only really when we brought Solanke on that he even, that was when we started to look a bit better, and we got our goal. But I think that was the only real challenge for him. And even then, he was the strongest of the centre back pairings for me.
Yeah, this, as I said, I didn't see the game, but if he's getting good praise, that's a good start. I'm going to be honest. He hasn't been the greatest player this season for West Ham. I'm not going to lie. We will talk about him a bit later on, but fair play to him. Obviously, George Baldock sadly passed away, and that was a very good tribute to all the Greeks last night. What do you make of that, mate? Because that's a bit of a shock. I'm going to be honest. 31 years old is no age.
No, it's same age as me, and it kind of starts to put things in perspective, and it's just a real shock for football, I think. And I don't want to speculate on what happened. I don't really think that's right. It's in times like this when you can only really think of the Baldock family and his friends, and the Greek. I thought the Greek fans were fantastic. I'll be honest. I thought the minute silence that they did was abysmal from the England fans' perspective. There was a lot of kids who were shouting out through it, and I know that's people go, "Oh, it's just kids," but that really for me has to be something that parents basically go, "What the hell are you?" Clip round the ear.
Yeah.
I'm not advocating that, but it's one of those where you just think, who's raising you?
It's got to be it's got to be a respect basis.
Yeah,
That's
100%. And I think that there were quite a few fans who were just making stupid "Come on England" shouts and things, and the Greek fans were quality all night. I've got to say they were brilliant. They were in quite a lot of the England fan areas, and there was no issues at all. I didn't get this from a Greek fan. I got this from a steward. So.
Yeah, we could say it. You could say it for a Greek fan. It sounds better, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? It sounds like you had a round with a load of Greek fans. Right, let's talk a bit about West Ham. Sloth, give us your opinion on the first 7 Premier League games and the 2 cup games. Obviously, it's been mixed for me. I don't know where you lie on it, but what are you saying on West Ham start?
No, I think mixed is probably the best word to describe it. It's been very disappointing in some parts. I think particularly the Anfield away game. I think if you'd looked at the first 45 minutes or so, you'd have said we're playing really quite well, and there was enough there that you think, okay, this is a good thing to build on. We can go from here, and then it just seemed like our heads dropped, and I think that's kind of been a bit of the story of the season so far is we've either not applied ourselves or the heads have dropped at points, and we've maybe conceded a couple of goals too many in places. And hopefully, with a new centre back pairing and a bit more competition than we had last season, we'll see that start to change as they gel and understand how the other plays. But yeah, definitely a mixed bag, and I think that there was enough there to be optimistic about, which made the scorelines as frustrating as they were.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to be honest. I think there's one game that really grinds into me very much so. Is the Fulham away game, where I think Fulham, we were absolutely dreadful. Don't get me wrong, we lost 5-0 there last season, so people can say that and say, you know what, it's an upgrade. We got a point there. But under a new manager, I've not seen anything to say, well, I can see us going to better level. Do you know what I mean? Has the football really been better, really? Or has it just been a little, it's just been a little seasoning of better, but nothing major for you?
I think there's been the seasoning, as you put it. I think there's the
Yeah.
building blocks are there, and you look at the Crystal Palace away game. I thought we played really well, and we could have easily had, we should have really had, when you look at the chances that Fulkirk had, 3 or 4, and I think that it's been our attacking side that has let us down, and it's weird to say that off the back of a 4-1 win, but I think that had we had a clinical striker or someone just a bit more in changes, and we may be looking at slightly different things, but that's all ifs and buts. I
Oh, he's gone. We'll give him back. Carry on, Slav.
I think I think it's been a bit of a change where we're trying to move away from last season where it felt like we had to go a goal behind to play, and we haven't quite set that emotion yet, but we're getting there. And I think that the signs there, as you say, there's a little sprinkling, but it's been disappointing that it's not quite kicked into full gear, particularly when there's been a full pre-season to do so.
I think what it is for me, the optimism was very high at West Ham, like through pre-season signings, etc. We come to the first game against Villa, and listen, Villa are a Champions League side company right now, so we've got to respect what they are, yeah. But there's a few games this season where I feel like we've just gone a bit stale to a point, yeah. Fulham away just comes to me all the time. I look at it and I think we could have easily lost that game 2-3-4-0 on a different day if they would have took their chances, especially in the first half. I thought it was dreadful in the first half. And I look at the Brentford game, and I look at the first half again. It seems like West Ham go first half, don't do nothing. Second half, they come out and they look a better side. Now, obviously, in the Premier League, you can't be a 45-minute side, otherwise you're going to get done, ain't you? Let's be honest. Like if we keep coming out early and not turning it on, then great. Ipswich, I'm hoping that that's a start of something, but I'm not going to get my hopes up because Ipswich are a side that I expect West Ham to beat. Like I expect West Ham to play Ipswich down every day at the LS and win every single time. What games disappointed you most this season so far, Sluff? Apart from the Liverpool Cup game.
I think the Fulham one was really disappointing for me because, as you mentioned, that first 45 minutes we should have been well out of sight in terms of not even getting anything from the game. And while you could sort of look at that as a positive and say, we played really poorly, but we still got a point, I think that's that's too glass half full, in my opinion. That kind of hides just how poor we were in that game. And it's one thing to look at the Brentford game and say, we went behind from an early fantastic goal and clawed our way back in. Should have won it, to be honest. But when you see such a contrasting performance and you see us go behind early on, and at the 45-minute mark, potentially 3 or 4 down, we should have lost that game 9 times out of 10 we lose that game. But if it wasn't for that last minute equaliser, I think we'd have been looking at the worst performance, since the Crystal Palace under Moyes. And I think that's a real disappointment. And I think it was also one that I think Fulham looked good, but I think they looked flattering, and I thought they were there to be got at. So I was just really disappointed with how we set up.
What about the Chelsea game? Because I see Darren in the chat there just saying the most disappointing game for him was the Chelsea one. Don't get me wrong, it was disappointing from a aspect of looking at it and going, your first 10 minutes, you're over the place, you're 1-0 down, then you're 2-0 down. For me, I expected West Ham to get a good eye in there. I don't know why. I even said it on the preview. I expect us to get beat heavily because I wasn't confident enough for them to play Chelsea right now. Do you know what I'm saying? What did you make of that game? Because obviously that was an hammering, and obviously Lopetegui got a lot of stick for subbing off Somerville in that game.
Yeah, and I thought Somerville was one of the real bright spots in that game. One of the very few. And I think the only reason that's not my most disappointing game is because I think Chelsea are a very good team, and I kind of said it in our preview on Babbling, but I either expect them to win 2 or 3-0, or I expect us to somehow scrape a win. Like, it's a London derby and anything can happen. But I think it was very disappointing to see just how little intensity there was. And as we just said with the other games, it seemed like we had to go a goal down and the heads dropped. It was incredibly frustrating to watch as a fan. And I think the decision to take Somerville off was one that got a very vocal reaction from the fans. But I think, we were losing that game, and I don't really think that any of the side showed enough to even suggest we get back into it. So I think it was one of those where you take him off and rest his legs, and the fans don't like it. But if it means he's fitter for the next game, or it reduces the risk of injury, then it's not a popular one. But I suppose that's the sort of decision that managers make and get paid for at the end of the day. But really disappointed with that game. It was one that I think had we gone into that and shown a lot of fight, and Chelsea had just absolutely blitzed us off the park. If we'd still shown a bit of fight and gone into everything and crunching challenges, I don't think West Ham fans would have been as disappointed, because as I just said, it's a London derby, anything can happen. And how many times have we seen West Ham get tonked in a derby? But it's when it feels like we don't show up, and that's when it's really disappointing.
Yeah, I completely agree. One thing with West Ham fans is you give it everything in a London derby, right? Especially against teams that are your rivals to a point. And I don't mean rivals as in the league, I mean as in historic rivals, Spurs, Chelsea, etc. Against Chelsea, I felt like Lopetegui gave up to a point on the 60th minute, and there was no fighting him to say, you know what, let's try and get a goal and spin this around. The Somerville one bugs me a little bit, because this is where I'm going to lead on to Lopetegui in a minute, because Somerville actually played all right that game, and then we didn't see him again, really. He had a sub-appearance against Liverpool, and then he was supposed to start against Brentford, then he gets pulled at the last minute, and he comes on as a sub, and then even against Ipswich, he's a substitute. Now, I'm going to lead into sort of Lopetegui right now. How do you assess him? Because some fans want him gone. Some fans are turning around and saying that they can see where he's going, but it's taking time. I'll give you my opinion, Sloth. I feel that this geezer's got the next 4 games up to the next international break for me to really assess him. Yeah, because he's got Spurs, Manchester United, Nottingham Forest, Everton. Now, the next 2 games are big. Tottenham away is a game that we don't want to lose. Manchester United at home, the way they are performing currently right now, there's no way that West Ham should be losing that game at the LS against this side at all. How do you assess him for you, mate?
I agree. The next 4 games are really going to paint a picture of how the players have taken to his style, and also
Yeah.
his plan or way for us to try and play. And I think that the Man United game, this is the perfect time to play Manchester United because they've not sacked Ten Hag, and I think it would be typical if they'd sacked him in the international break and we play them when they've got that new manager bounce, and we just get blitzed by them. But I think it's a good time to play them because so much is up in the air, and that's basically a team talk, isn't it? I think the Spurs game, he'll be saying, you were so poor against Chelsea, you have to go out and impress the fans, give the fans something to celebrate, or at least be a bit prouder of. And as we kind of said, I think the London derbies, they're always tricky to try and fully assess how they're going to play out, or because Spurs are Spursy at the moment, aren't they? They're unpredictable, and if we catch their first 45 minutes against Brighton, we're probably going to be well out of it by half time if we play like we did against Fulham. But if we catch them how they played in the second half, we're well in it and we could potentially get 3 points. So I think you have to look at those next 2 games and say, this is where you show your minerals. And these are quality sides who should be pushing for those European spots. If you want to be up amongst them, you've got to show your quality against them.
Yeah.
And I think the Forest and the Everton game, I think that you've got to be looking at those as 6 points. And that's no disrespect to them. I just think that, especially after 2 really tough games, that's where you go, we've got to pick up points here.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the Spurs game is massive for him, if I'm being honest. I think if he goes to Spurs and he puts in a performance like he did against Chelsea, then the fan base will turn on him fast. Because the one thing with Lopetegui, which I've noticed, I don't think this geezer can grind the result out. Now, people used to slag off Moyes quite a lot last season, and many for the last 2 years, in fact, for grinding results out in moments. I don't see that in Lopetegui at all. I see a man that he's going to go all out, and that's it, and win or lose, etc. Now, against Spurs, if we play a high line, we're going to get completely destroyed. Right, and I hope his stubbornness to a point goes away, and he goes, right, let's play like a mid block, sit there, let them come onto us and hit them on the breaks. I think we are set up as a counter-attacking team. I don't know about yourself. I think when you look at the players that we've got, the reason why the attackers are not playing so well at the minute is because we've got a lot of counter-attacking players there. Bowen, Kudus, they are counter-attacking merchants. They're not really possession-based players to a point. What are you saying with him, though, as in Lopetegui? Are you liking the way he's managing West Ham at the minute?
The tough thing for me is that I like everything I see of him from the media point. And, even in the pre-season, I was like, actually, I really like that. And there was a point where he's talking to the academy players. I think it was earthy on like one of his first days. And he was really, you could tell he was glowing and positive about his future. And I think that's really good to see. That's what you want from a West Ham manager. But as you say, I just kind of think that even after that Chelsea loss, he seemed a bit lost. And I don't know if that was just the fact that we'd been so poor and he was really taken aback by it, or the fact that he just didn't quite have an answer to what Chelsea had done. And that would be where I worry more. I think, as we mentioned, there's been a few too many thrashings for me to kind of give him praise to a point where I'm saying, all right, yeah, I really like this, and I can see things growing and positives in it. I just think that you earn that sort of praise from fans by putting in performances, and as you said, grinding out a draw or a result in a derby, and I just don't think we've done that yet. So for me, I want it to work, but I feel like Lopetegui's got quite a bit of work to do before that can happen. And if we get 6 points against Spurs and Man United, we'll be potentially sat here going, well, there's the start of something. but
Yeah,
it's a big if, isn't it?
yeah, I completely agree, mate. I 100% agree with you on that. I need to see something, Slough. Like all I keep hearing and seeing on social media quite a lot is time to gel and trust the process. Now, I get you got to give the geezer time. Don't get me wrong, but there's one thing that does really grind into me and irritate me quite a lot, especially with some West Ham fans, is that they say I trust the process, but I've got to see something to trust to a point.
Yeah.
I haven't really seen anything or any note to say this geezer is going to take us to another level. Now, listen, people can say what they like about David Moyes. He's been and gone. Yeah, he's no longer here. Lopetegui's here. I personally feel he's relying on his bench a hell of a lot, and he's getting it wrong from the start. And his bench is getting him out of shit. Like against Fulham, Danny Ings. Of all the people to save the day for us, Danny Ings comes and saves the day. Right now, with the talent pool that we've got, should we really be relying on our bench to get us out of crap in certain games? Like even I get the substitutes. This is where I'm going to lead on to ask you if you believe in the subs that he's doing, because he's making loads of subs. It's on one hand he's getting it right because he changes it against Brentford, gets the point. He has a row with Kudus, he gets it right. He takes off Somerville a few weeks before that against Chelsea. The fan base all over him straight away. Where do you lie with him in regards to the subs? Because you had a manager last season who didn't make many, and you got a manager that's making too many.
I think it's a very interesting contrast to have, isn't it? You've gone from kind of two ends of the scale, but I think it's definitely something that I want to see when, if we're losing. I want to see the manager proactive and trying to make changes. I think part of the frustration for me has been that I don't agree with the lineup sometimes, and I think that for me, the substitution that he makes that gets the positive result is the one that he should have started with. And I think when you look at that, I don't know if he's trying to, he's looked at it and gone, I'm going to try and find my first 11. I'm going to try and find my best team that works for me. And if that's at the expense of results, it's early doors, I'm going to find out early on and then we can hit the ground running. I think that the issue with that is that there's this slow period where you don't quite get the results and the side can look poor and you have to make these changes, and people, like myself, are going, well, why has he started like that? And making those changes when it was obvious to other people. And I think it's just about, it could potentially just be about him finding that for himself and going forward. But it's a tricky one because I think that we've got the best bench we've had at West Ham in a long time. And so you're going to see that utilised a lot. But whether or not the players we have on that bench suit us in certain areas is one of the big issues. And, Danny Ings is a great example of someone who is obviously a quality goal scorer and very clinical, but doesn't always suit the system. And it's when you're piling forward, like we did against Fulham, that you can rely on him. But I don't think he doesn't work in a pressing system. So he only works, say 30% of the time when you're kind of going hell for leather. And I think that the big issue for fans like me and you is that when I look at the starting lineup, I just see flaws. I see, like, especially up top, I think this was so easy to address. And, we can go over, I don't really want to talk about him, because every single game, it's like, oh, well, if only we had Duran. But I just don't understand why we didn't get a striker in who matches that profile. And I think if you look at the starting interview from earlier in the week, he said there's a reason we got Fulkrug, and it's because of what he brings, not just on the pitch, but also around the squad. And, he has a quality on and off the pitch that you can rely on. And I think that's kind of hinting at the fact that he will gel, that will fit in it, and he will play his part to try and get involved, and you can rely on him to sort of be, be on side with you and give his all. But I just worry that instead of signing him, we should have gone out and got someone like, Tierno Barry, who's gone to La Liga, but fits the profile and would have cost less money, but could have potentially offered us a lot more. And it's early doors on that terms, because Fulkrug could well come back and score goals, a lot of goals for us. But I think that with the way we wanted to play, it's frustrating for me to see that we haven't addressed that issue that has been so big for so long.
I completely agree, mate. When I look at West Ham, and I've known you boys for a good few years, when Stydham come in, and I say it's quite a lot, when Stydham come in, the first issue that he would have needed addressing is getting the striker right. Like getting someone in who's going to be your striker and your main vocal point for the next few years. Now, listen, we've missed out on he who shall not be named, right? But I don't mind shopping in that market, because we're shopping in a good market at the minute, and we're shopping at top end young talent. So I'm not going to lose it with that. The issue I've got with what you're saying in regards of striker and everything is it feels like we've chucked it at Fulkrug and say, right, we need you to get us into Europe within the next 2 years, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to a point. Like the thing is with Lopetegui. Going back to Lopetegui, is you've got Lopetegui there. He's the one who brought Max Kilman, and who I'm going to get onto a little while. I think he's been really good.
Yeah.
The striker doesn't fit him. He's gone with Antonio. Now we all know Antonio is a club legend to a point, but should he be our starting striker on his 9th or 10th season at West Ham? I don't think he should be. Not when a man has got a year left and he's basically winding his contract down into nothing, and we're relying on him to get us into Europe, because there's no incentive for him to get us into Europe, is there really? To a point. So when it comes to sort of that and the striker, I completely agree. Like I think that's a major missed opportunity. I will talk about the transfer window and all. But before I do, what do you make of Lopetegui, Kudus left wing, mate? Yeah.
See, I think this is one of my biggest gripes at the moment, because personally I would just play him centrally, and whether that's as a false nine or even in the central attacking mid, where I think Paqueta has underperformed, you could stick him on the left, and you saw how that worked and created chances with him and Emerson linking up so well. Don't get me wrong, it does offer you less pressing and it does offer you less pace on that left-hand side, but I think Emerson has enough quality to cover that and enough defensive understanding to counteract that need. So it's, for me, the most frustrating part at the moment, because I think that Kudus and Bowen are our best goal scorers, and you don't take Bowen away from the right-hand side unless you play him centrally. And if you're not playing him centrally, then you should really play Kudus there, because you're not going to have him on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion, and I think that he offers all the sort of attributes that Antonio does. He's just, he's not done it in the Premier League, and I think that that from a centre forward point of view or false nine, not quality wise. But I think that when you look at that situation, it's one where I think West Ham fans want the front three to be Somerville, Kudus, and Bowen, and I think that's the perfect fit. But obviously, he's a big fan of Antonio, and Antonio offers a lot. He offers a lot of quality. But as you said, personally, I don't think we should be relying on him to start games at this point in his career and try and win us matches. I think if you bring him off the bench after Kudus has been running for 65 minutes or so, you are bringing on just pure energy, strength, and you're going to give defenders nightmares. So I'm kind of unsure, particularly with Fulkrug's injury, why we're not doing that. But it's something that I personally would look to change, but whether or not Lopetegui does is the big question.
Mm. For me, I've made it quite clear on here. I do not like it because I think what you're doing with Kudus on the left is you're making a player bad by putting him on the left and then complaining that he's bad because he's on the left. Like, do you know what I'm saying? What I can't work out, Sloth, is you've got Crescencio Somerville sitting there, who's naturally left-sided, who's a pretty good player, and you're putting Mo on the left, and because he's not putting in 8s and 9s out of 10 performances, we're complaining about it. I agree with you. Again, as a 10, try it. I'll try it. I'd be up for that. You know what I mean? And you sort of look at that situation. Obviously, Lucas Paqueta hasn't been great this season, and he's been sort of pretty bang average to a point. So I think Mo on the left, it worked against Ipswich Town, but will it work against Manchester United and Spurs?
Yeah.
That's the $1 million question. And the answer to that, for me personally, is no. I think they will know like what to do with him in that situation. We'll talk about some players. Obviously, Max Kilman. We discussed it in the summer. We turned around and said, you said it's a good signing. I said, I'm not too sure. I've got to be honest, he's surprised me. He really has. I think he's been excellent for us. I think he's been our best player, if I'm being honest, so far this season. What have you made of Max Kilman this season, mate?
I've been really impressed with him, and I've liked. I think when he had Mavropanos next to him, one of the frustrating things about Mavropanos is he tends to make very silly decisions at times, and I keep reverting back to the Crystal Palace back heel that he tried to do, and he essentially almost gave them a goal just from a very stupid decision. But I think that it's so key for Max Kilman to have an understanding of who he's playing next to. Key for any centre back, to be honest. But it's evident that whoever he's next to, he's confident progressing the ball and, like against Palace, playing those passes, looking to go forward. That's what's really impressed me, because I think defensively we knew he would be a big physical unit and he'd throw himself at things. But I think maybe that attacking element of his game has been something that's really surprised a few fans. And I think now, in particular with Todibo potentially next to him, that will give us a lot of creative joy, and hopefully help increase the amount of goals from that front three, because some of the passing and some of the creation of space that we've seen from our centre backs has been fantastic. And I think Max Kilman, I kind of spoke about how I think he's going to be the Dante-like figure for Todibo, which Dante was his centre-back partner at Nice, and he very much was the anchor for Todibo to be a bit more creative. But I think Kilman has shown that he can be creative as well and still be defensively very strong. And I know that sounds silly when we've conceded quite a few goals, but I think it's been very clear that, as I mentioned, the centre-backs are trying to find a partnership. They're trying to gel with one another, and I think it will build from here. I've been really impressed with Kilman, and I think that he's not necessarily the most vocal on the football pitch at times, but I think he leads by example, and that's something that I think is priceless, as well as the fact he's two-footed.
Yeah, completely agree, mate. Max Kilman, for me, I've got to take a big L on this one because I thought 40 million was a lot of dough to go and drop to Wolves for this man. You look at Wolves currently right now, they're in disarray, and you look at us, fair enough, we're a work in progress, but you look at Max as a whole, I think he's doing very well for us. Do you know what I mean? I think the goals that we've conceded, some of them, but the Fulham goal was on Mavropanos, wasn't on Kilman. And there were certain games where Kilman's not really at fault for the goals that have gone in to a point. The only issue I had with Max was at Liverpool away, where he didn't get that chance, that golden chance, he could sort his feet out and put it in the back of the net. Other than that, he's been really good. Now, his defensive partner, his new defensive partner, Mr. Todibo, I'm going to be honest, I'm glad to see him in the side now. I feel a bit more comfortable with him in there. I know Mavropanos had a good game last night and all that, but Tadibo looks the real deal. He looks like a man who's good defensively, can bring the ball out. What have you made of the last two games with him, mate? Because we're unbeaten in them two games.
Yeah, I think we look a lot more solid, and I know we have conceded in both games. I think
Mm.
that you can see that they've both got confidence in each other, and even against Ipswich, Tadibo was willing to take a few more risks and do a few more turns that were, they paid off. They were successful. They created space, and you could also see that Kilman was anticipating that as well. So they've obviously gelled quite quickly. I think the good thing for us is that Mavropanos will be looking and saying, I probably deserve to be playing, or at least a strong backup. And I actually thought he came on and did quite well at right back. So if we're looking at potentially going into a three, then that is a big physical three at the back. That is a quick, strong, and technically capable three. But Tadibo, I think it took a little while for him to get to full fitness. Obviously, the only way you can do that is with more games. But so far, he's been really good, and I think that it will just be a case of growing that partnership and growing that confidence in one another and understanding of each other's game, because that's key for any centre back partnership. And I think that when you look at the physicality and the pace that they provide, and from last season, I think Zuma is a really good contrast, because when he first joined, he's the sort of defender who we lacked for a long time, where he had his head up, he was looking for passing and progressing the ball. That's exactly what Tadibo's done. And in the twilight years of Zuma's career, it was very much the opposite. He was slow on the ball and a lot less commanding, and kind of had his head down. So I think we've got the best elements of both those defenders, and hopefully we will see that that progression and a few more clean sheets, which we didn't see much of last season.
I agree. I must admit, I do. I think the back four. I think the back four is. I think he's starting to take shape. The back four. If I'm being honest, Wan-Bissaka, Emerson, like fullbacks, and Tadibo and Kilman. I think Tadibo and Kilman will be fine. I think Tadibo has got that element of class about him, and I think Max knows the Premier League, and he's just a decent player. He's a solid player. Like, and I didn't realise how solid he actually was until I started seeing him in the West Ham shirt. I think when you look at players at other clubs, you don't really take a lot of notice of them, but with Max at West Ham, I think he's done well. I think that partnership is key moving forward. I think with Mavropanos, I've never been convinced with him at centre half. Like Darren says, there right back, he won't go amiss. But I don't think having three centre halves, we can risk playing three centre halves, because if one of them goes down injured, then we're scrambling. Do you know what I mean? So I think we need to use our loaf on this one big time. But to sort of round it up with them two, I am very pleased with them two. I think them two could be a very good defensive partnership, and if we can get the wing backs, Wan-Bissaka and Emerson, being a bit better defensively to a point, I think both of them have been done this year. I think we'll be fine. I really do, as a defensive sort of unit. I'm going to go into midfield with you. I might as well talk about the man of the moment, Mr. Lucas Paqueta. He's had charges. He's got a thing coming out in March. He's got a new QC that's going to try and save the day for him. Why is Lucas Paqueta not the Lucas Paqueta we bought, mate, at the minute?
I think he's been affected by this case hanging over him. He hasn't looked the same player since. It's very frustrating to see someone drop their performance so drastically. And I think that while you know that with Paqueta he's still going to offer you creativity, I think what we've seen recently is the frustration that he brings when he's not performing, and that creativity is paying off, where he's losing the ball so much and neglecting certain defensive responsibilities. For me, I still can't wrap my head around the FA deciding to get involved and blocking transfers. I understand that they have an obligation to Manchester City to say, actually, we're going to investigate. But I think that if you don't have concrete evidence and it is dragging on as long as it is, then it's a very strange decision to jump in and potentially, ruin a man's career because you have an allegation, and it's a very tricky area. But for me, I think it seems far too loose and hearsay for anything to, he's given them his phone, and this whole phone saga is yet another example where I just think the FA have messed up, because if you have evidence, surely you keep that evidence as long as it's relevant to the inquiry, because we both know that under WADA and all these anti-doping agencies, the players have to have phones. So he's got a new phone, and I'm sure that they would have been aware of that. So why have they given this phone back and they're suddenly complaining it's not available? Just keep it. I think it's a very strange way to conduct yourself, and I also think that they are looking to have this hard line with how they treat a very serious issue, which is understandable. But I think when you look at the allegations and the fact that, it's mostly based off random bets from Paquetá Island that are rumoured to be linked to him, I think it's far too loose to be actually throwing someone under the bus, and potentially costing West Ham points and financially from the get-go. I think it's a very strange one.
With spot fixing or spot betting, as they like to put it, that's something that in the betting community that's frowned upon as basically murder to a point, because what it is, you've got an advantage over the house, and if Lucas Paqueta has told people or insinuated that he is going to go down and get a yellow card, so get your money on that, he's basically cheating to a point. That's the only issue that I've got with that side of things. Like, if he was gambling, it's a different scenario. If this was an Ivan Toney situation where he's gambling and he's betting on himself to score, betting himself to assist, betting himself to get a yellow card, then basically that's gambling to a point. But if you're doing it to gain a profit for others, then basically you are doing something which is really, really bad. I mean, I'm involved in the betting community, so I know exactly what is that is all about, and that's like one of the ultimate things that they're totally against. Like, I'm literally, they will drag this out forever. They have to, especially with the amount of money that they've probably earned out of it. Now, we all know what it is. It's 4 counts of yellow cards, one against Villa, one against Bournemouth. I think one was against Leeds and someone else. So yeah, like, I feel like his performances have dipped massively. I think this is on his head. The issue I've got with him is, what do you do with him? Because he's our best creator. Do you persist with Lucas Paqueta and him playing 5s and 6s, or do you take him out the limelight, give him a few games out, and say, right, you sit there, you get your head straight, talk to you like whoever you got to talk to, and then we'll bring you back when you're sort of fully on it?
I think with the hiring of this new super lawyer, I think that's probably, we're trying to fight fire with fire, and I'd be very surprised if they did drop him and give him a period where he's kind of trying to get his head together. As I agree, when he performs, he's one of our most valuable players, but I just wonder how long you can keep kind of letting it slide before you say we need to start playing our best 11. And unfortunately, you're not quite pushing towards that at the moment, which is wild. If you said that to me 12 months ago or more, I'd be thinking, really? Like he's not part of the best 11, but it's very frustrating, and I think when you look at how it's all been conducted so openly, like they basically just thrown these accusations out there, and there doesn't seem to be much clarity on the case as it progresses. I can understand why it would mess with his head, but I do think that, and I've said repeatedly, you've got to do what's best for West Ham. And if it comes to the point where he's underperforming like he is, I think maybe you start to change things and look for a fix to that. And if that's playing Kudus in the centre to cover that, then I think that would be, the best thing for West Ham if he keeps producing these kind of below par performances.
What do you think the outcome will be, Sloth, with him?
I'd be very surprised if they find him guilty on the spot fixing as a whole, but I wouldn't be surprised if they charge him for the phone issue and say, you've kind of impeded the betting, the investigation, so we're going to give you a and look, if he's guilty, throw the book at him 100%. I'm not arguing that at all, but I just think that it seems far too speculative, in my opinion. It's not concrete, and I know the FA have a different standard of what they deem chargeable. It's not a proper court of law almost, in terms of you have to have watertight evidence, but it's very worrying if they do charge him based on the evidence that they have, because from what we've seen, and obviously if they have a smoking gun somewhere else, then I'm sure that will come out, but at the moment, from where we sit, it seems very strenuous, and I don't really see it.
The only issue with him, where I think this could go wrong for him big time, is that if he has withheld any information, why has he withheld it? Right. That's the one thing that leans to it. Now, it does take time to go back on records and bets and things like that. Now, I could have placed a bet a year ago. It's going to take them time to go and find that bet, go through it, see what time it was placed, wherever it was when it was placed, etc. I worry about him. I fear for him, because if they done Tonali with his ban, I think Lucas will get a ban of some note. What the ban will be, I don't know. Yeah. Will it be a lifetime ban? I don't think so. But I think what you've said's pretty true. I think what they're going to do is they're going to use that phone evidence as something to ban him on, to a point, and say, right, well, you've done that, we're going to do you on that. He's going to get a ban, right? Which it really does affect West Ham, because not only are we losing a player of quality, we're losing a player that we can't even sell, to a point. We can't even sell this man. And let's have it right. Last season, we all thought he was out the door. And come May at Manchester City away, final game of the season, we all thought, right, that's the end of Lucas Paqueta. He's going to sail off up to Manchester. And to lose out on a player is one thing, lose out on a transfer is another. And I think that this issue with Lucas Paqueta has backtracked West Ham for, I'm going to say, about 2 years, if I'm being honest. I think you're going to lose the player. You're going to have no way of replacing him with the quality. And are we going to get the same player back when he comes back? I don't think we are. Do you know what I mean? I think he's actually got a bit of resentment to being in England, to a point, because I think he feels that the FA are all over him for something he hasn't done. Now, that is an issue, because if he hasn't done it himself and other people have done it on him, then that's the problem. But if he's said he was going to do something, that's where the line is with him, I'm afraid. And
I think the thing with the Tonali bets as well is they had witnesses, they had people coming forward and saying like, he has done this, and he was part of it with us, and there was a group of players who all basically held their hands up. But I think when you're dealing with a situation like this, and it seems like no one's talking, but Paqueta is cooperating. I
Yeah.
think it's very tricky to charge him to the full extent when you know it could drag out for years, because he could take him to the court of arbitration for sport
Station. Yeah.
if they charge him and he feels that there isn't enough evidence there.
Mm. Yeah, and do you know what? That's the one thing we don't want, because then we've got it's just going to drag on and on and on, isn't it? Do you know what I'm saying? But hopefully it will get resolved in the near future. Do you know what I'm saying? If he hasn't done anything wrong and he does get a ban, then I really do feel for him. But if he has, then you've asked for it, I'm afraid, mate. Let's talk about Thomas Souček, mate, before we come towards the end. He's a man that is going to get a lot of stick. 1 minute he's good, 1 minute he's bad. He scored big goals for us this season. What do you make of him, mate? Because I'm gonna be honest, he is the most Marmite player at West Ham at the minute.
I absolutely love him. I make no apologies for it. I think he is. I've said it for a long time. He's a blunt instrument. He's incredibly effective at what he does, but there are very limiting factors with him. And I think if you want to play him and get the best out of him, you really lean into those things that he offers, and you know the goals that he can bring, the physical presence and work rate that he gives you. And I was kind of saying on babbling that about, you know, we maybe it's that sort of point in his career where you move him into the back. I think he would be a fantastic centre back, and I know that's kind of, are we ever going to see him in the centre back role? No, probably not. But I do think that if he was a centre back and he was playing this way from that role, I think we'd all be going, wow, what a player. Like, you know, he's a great centre back, doesn't take risks, and maybe tries to play the easy ball. But when you're talking about a midfielder, his flaws are so obvious. And I think as long as he can keep providing vital goals, like you said, those flaws are very much hidden, or not hidden. They're alleviated, and you know, they're kind of, you can put them to one side for a minute because he's scoring goals, and that's the most important thing. But I think that we're getting to the point where the fact that he is slower than a lot of the midfielders, and that our midfield in general is quite slow, is coming back to hurt us. And it's a question of whether we go out and sign a proper box-to-box unit, someone who's going to break up the play and offer that strength and physicality on top of the ability, and then utilize Souček around that. Or is it time that we, you know, basically say thank you for everything, and you know, you in my opinion, he's just as much of a legend as Antonio. I love Souček, and he's pretty much everything that I want in a footballer, minus sort of technical qualities at times. But that's exactly the same with Antonio. And I think it's a case of, with Souček, I would love to have him at the club for years to come. But I think, like Antonio, it needs to now be a point where we're stepping back and sort of, you know, not relying on him as heavily, or starting him as much as we are. Use him in the cups and use him as you know, a rotational player, a rotational option, and get someone like a wrecking ball like Andy Diouf or someone like that at Lens, and bring them in to play that role. But I think for what we want to do, particularly this pressing style, it's not really his forte. But I don't hold that against him. But
does he get in West Ham's best 11 right now, though, for you? Because for me, I look at him, I get the technical side stuff. Don't get me wrong. And listen, I get that argument, and I'm with people 100%. He's not that technically good. but he scores big goals and he scores key goals at key moments. Like this season, the goal at Palace, the goal at Brentford, they're big goals for us. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think with when I look at him, if he was technically good, he wouldn't be at West Ham. Do you know what I'm saying? So we've got to know where we've got to humble ourselves a little bit. This geezer is not the best thing since sliced bread, but he's something that is effective for us. Now, I do look at our midfield, and I will sort of round up with Tim Steidten at the end of this. I look at the midfield. The midfield feels light to me, massively light. I think we've got players in there that lack pace. Guido Rodriguez, for me, just doesn't seem like he's going to be able to manage the Premier League, in my opinion. So does Souček get in West Ham's best 11 right now?
I think, as you quite rightly say, Guido is probably the one who comes out for him, in my opinion, just because I haven't seen enough from him overall yet to say he starts for us. But then again, we've got a lot of players who are off form, and I think you could look at them all and say, if anyone deserves to be playing at the moment, it's Souček, because at least he's popping up with vital goals. And for me at the moment, he does start. It's just a shame that I think the midfield does appear to be as up in the air or off the pace as it should be.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's where I'm going to lead into Tim Steidten to round this up. Obviously, Steidten, the window come and went. We signed some players. What did you make of the window looking back at it now, mate? Because I think at the time we was all looking at it through West Ham tinted glasses and going, yes, it looks amazing. For me, I think we've really dropped a bollock on the midfield. On the midfield, I can't understand how Guido Rodriguez has been picked up and this geezer can't run in the Premier League, and he's very, very slow. Luis Guilherme is an interesting one because I think he's a talent, but when I look at the team as a whole, did we need him right now, or do we need him 2 years' time? I think we need players right now. I think Wan-Bissaka's a good signing. Somerville's a good signing. Füllkrug is a 50-50 signing. We don't know what we're going to get with him until he comes back fit. Obviously, Kilman. How do you assess the transfer window and the players that we brought in, mate?
I still think we had a very positive window. I think, you look at the overall quality that we brought in with Kilman, Todibo, and let's not forget the way we got those deals done, like with Todibo. I think that's a fantastic deal on loan to buy.
Yeah.
So we can write it off to the next summer financially. I think that's a fantastic bit of business. But for me, there has been, there are some glaring errors there. And you look at the fact we were close to signing Zakaria, who's gone to Monaco, and he is performing out of his skin for Monaco.
Yeah.
He is exactly the sort of centre mid that we're crying out for. But we kind of said all along, he's a bit too injury prone. And it's kind of one of those things where if he came to West Ham, you guarantee he does his ankle or something on the first day.
Yeah.
But he's exactly the kind of player we need. And yet we didn't follow that up. Like we didn't go out and sign a player like that. So that's where the frustration is. We had interest in the right targets, and even, we're not mentioning him, but even say Samuel Meridian, who's gone to Porto and is scoring for fun, we looked at a deal for him and then we pulled out. And because, Porto didn't, Porto basically offered a better financial deal long term.
Yeah, it's like 50. Is it right? It's 50% sell-on clause or something. Yeah.
So any sort of fee that they get in the future, there's a big. They own half his image rights, which obviously we couldn't do as well in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So that's a big stumbling block. But I do kind of think, if you'd said to Atletico, we'll give you 25 million to sort of financially boost it, but we'll still give you 50%. Still give you a 50% sell-on clause. But we can't have any of the image rights stuff. kind of like what Chelsea were doing or were offering. I don't understand why we didn't match that. I don't understand why that was an issue because, again, we didn't go out and sign anyone similar. And apparently we were looking at bringing Fulker in regardless of who was to come in. You know, if we had got Duran, we would still have looked to get Fulker. And now I find that quite hard to believe, but I think we would have been very reliant on someone leaving. And I think we've massively dropped the ball there. It's a case of we came very close to having a fantastic window, best window ever. I still think we've had a very, very good window when you look at the likes of Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Todibo, Kilman. And I think Somerville will be a player to watch in the future. I think Guilherme, as you said, he's a huge talent. And you speak to anyone in South America who scouts, they say he's going to be a huge player.
Yeah.
So it's very it's frustrating for fans, I get, because they wanted to see more of him. We have seen him come on against Ipswich, and I thought he looked pretty bright, actually. I thought, it's only a few minutes, but hopefully that's that's a sign that we're going to see him involved more. But for me, I think you're quite right in the fact that we dropped the ball massively in some areas, and I think had we signed two of those kind of players, we would be looking at the start of this season in a very different way. Hopefully a positive one, but I think it would be a very strong window overall.
See, I agree. I agree with the sort of. I think the window was okay. Right, it was a good window. Right, it's a better window than what we normally have, and it was a window that we didn't expect. I'll say that I didn't expect us to go out and get Wan-Bissaka, Todibo, Gilman, and all these players. The issue I've got is the striker front to a point, and you bring Füllkrug in, and he doesn't match the player that he was chasing in the first place. Now, as I said at the beginning of the video, we are shopping in a good market. Like, we're looking at high-end, young, quality talent. The issue is that West Ham can't seem to get this high-end quality talent over the line, and it seems like we go for him, we go half-hearted for him, and then we don't get him, and then we pull back, and then we go for someone like Füllkrug. Now, for me, Füllkrug is not a long-term signing. That's a signing to get you into Europe. That's someone that they've turned around and said, right, we need a centre forward who's available. Füllkrug's there. We can go and get him. He may be able to get us into Europe this year and fire us as a centre forward and score more goals than Antonio. The issue is with Füllkrug is we don't know how good he's going to be, and if he does come back against Spurs, or that's delayed, he comes back against Manchester United, or whenever he does come back, I do feel he's going to have to start hitting the heights of what we need. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't all this like I see it quite a lot. Stuff people say you've got to give him time and all that, and I get all that, but this geezer's a 31-year-old, soon to be 32-year-old German international centre forward. He's not. He don't need time to bed in. This guy, well, we need him now. We don't need him in 6 months. Like, we need him right now. I think the midfield, as I say, is majorly light. I think I think we were so lucky to have Declan Rice there, who back in the day used to cover a lot of ground and do a lot of work. We're seeing it now that our midfield's very much exposed to a point. Like, Alvarez hasn't really been cooking to a point this season, and the only thing he's good at is getting sent off at present. But for me, we're shopping in a good market. That's the only thing I can say. And I can look at it and go, fair enough, we missed out on Duran, and it didn't happen. But the question that needs to be asked is, why did it not happen? Like, what was stopping that from happening? Now, I've seen stuff on social media like you have, Sloth, and I've seen people say we offered 50, they wanted 50 million and 20% sell-on clause. I've seen it that it was 40 million, but it was 20% sell-on clause that West Ham weren't prepared to go to. Like, I think the next time or next summer is a big summer for both West Ham and Steidon to a point, because I think Steidon's doing okay. I think he's doing okay, but I do think the striker front have got to be addressed, like especially next summer. Like no Danny Ings, no Antonio. The only striker that we will have on our books with a sort of long-term ish contract will be Fulkrug. Yeah, because both of them lads will be gone. So um, yeah, I'm very mixed. I'm very mixed with it. Like I think the back line is very good. I think the back line sorts itself out. I think the midfield's light. It's just the left side. You've signed Crescencio Somerville, but you're putting a right-sided player on the left, which is mad. Any final words for you, Sloth, before we make a move?
No, I think you're spot on with that window, and I think a few people have kind of had digs at me for defending or saying like I thought the business was good in the summer.
Mm.
I think you're spot on with the fact that next summer we need to really push forward and address those areas. I think potentially we would have been looking at, getting a lot of cash for Paqueta, maybe even having Cole Palmer involved in that deal, and that would have been something that the club was thinking of. And look, that's ifs and maybes, and that's all hearsay. But I don't have any sort of doubt that was in the back of the mind of the club and people planning to go forward. So I think we've now got to reassess. We can't get that money for Paqueta, so we're going to have to likely get it from someone like Kudus in the summer, and that money will be vital in then addressing those problem areas. If we don't do that next summer, I think that is when you start to ask really big questions. But overall, I think West Ham season, it's been a mixed bag, but I think there's enough there that we should be heading towards the right direction.
Hopefully, I think, as I say, to round this out, I think the next 4 games are huge. Like huge from a fan base point of view, from a manager point of view, and also from a player's point of view. As I say, Spurs, Manchester United, Nottingham Forest, and then Everton. Not easy games. I'm going to be honest. Nottingham Forest at the minute are not that side that we should be expecting to go there and win. They look like a pretty decent outfit. They beat Liverpool at Liverpool and drew with Chelsea, so they're not mugs this season. But I hope that West Ham sort of turn this corner. I think the Ipswich result is a good result, but I need to see that intensity and that sort of class against Spurs away. If he does that, then I can sit here and you can sit on babbling and say, right, we might be starting to turn a corner now, and it might be starting to work. At present, I think they're still on the corner. I don't think we've turned nothing as yet. Sloth, thank you very much for coming on, mate. I really do appreciate it on this Friday lunchtime. Smash a like on the video, subscribe to E20 Zone TV, hit the notification bell. Also subscribe to Babbling Irons channel. You know where to find him. The channel is tagged in the title. Get that right, tagged in title. And yeah, go and subscribe to Babbling Irons, subscribe to E20 Zone TV, and hit that like button. I will be back probably next week, weekend off, garage brunch tomorrow, so I'm going to be loving life, reliving my youth. So yeah. I shall see you again in the next one, but take care of yourselves and above all else, each other. Peace.